Searching the web for the most talented, creative, and intriguing independent authors.
The Emit Blackwell Show, diving into the creative minds of sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and paranormal authors. Their fantasy is our reality. Hello and welcome once again to the Emit Blackwell Show. Thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. On this episode, I'll be speaking with award-winning author Michael H. Rubin. We discuss his methods for research, his favorite authors, and what new projects he has on the hot plate. And if we're lucky, we might be able to get him to play a little bit of that authentic French Quarter jazz. So, without any further ado, let's begin. Hi, Michael. Do you mind if I call you Mike, by the way?
Not at all.
All right. So, how are you doing out there today?
I'm doing great, thanks.
So now you've written a couple of books, right? But you're a lawyer, and how has being a lawyer impacted your writing?
Well, you know, the good thing about being a lawyer is you get to be very organized and making your presentations. The great thing about being a fiction writer is there's no footnotes, so it's a wonderful combination. I've actually interviewed and been on panels with a number of other authors around the country, including Marcia Clark and Scott Turow and others, and all of them have used their legal backgrounds to help form a story that is realistic and compelling.
Oh, yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, it almost kind of, I wouldn't say that plays out like a police report at all, because those can be really dry and dull, but the details are there. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and a reader doesn't want to have a treatise, but the reader wants to know that the few details that you put in are solid and that there's research behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've published two books, The Cotton Crest Curse and Cashed Out. Have you received any awards for these, for your writing?
Yes, we have. In fact, my wife and I write these together under the name Michael H. Rubin, but the two of us are joint writers of it. Cashed Out, our more recent one, just won the Jack Eden Award, which is a big award for the best contemporary novel for compelling characters in a realistic setting. And our first book, The Cotton Crest Curse, at the American Library Association meeting out in San Francisco a few years ago, won the IndieFab Book of the Year Award as the best thriller and suspense novel published by a university or independent press.
Now, you're actually involved in a couple of organizations, like writing organizations. Can you just name a couple of those?
Sure. The Mystery Writers of America, the International Crime Writers Association, the Authors Guild, to name a few. So
now, when it comes to being parts of those organizations, does it help with the promotion of your book whenever you come out with a new one?
It helps in the sense that you know people around the country who you can send the manuscript to and get their input on.
Yeah, and that's something I want to talk to anybody who's listening out there. Those organizations that you get involved in, for one, it's a community of writers, and it's also, you know, a community that readers respond well to. And just like you were saying, any one of those organizations, they do kind of work together. So I have another question here for you. Tell us a little bit about what happens in your latest novel, Cashed Out.
Well, Cashed Out involves a young lawyer with a good Southern Cajun name, Sheck Snyder. And unlike every other lawyer or many lawyers in books, when his ex-wife asks him to defend her in a murder case, he refuses. And when he says no, things keep getting worse for him. The shorthand column about the book is this: if you're holding more than $4 million of your dead client's money in cash, you're everybody's target.
Yeah, and that's advice for anybody out there who's listening. Yeah, wow. So now, Shex, he's pretty much lost everything at the beginning of the book. He's pretty much down and out, but he is a lawyer. And did you pull from personal experience when you built this character? Like, what would happen if you were in that situation?
It wasn't personal experience, but, it's a tough job market out there for many lawyers. And many lawyers do well, but many don't, particularly for young lawyers coming out of law school these days. So I tried to imagine what it would be like if you kept being a smart person but kept failing at everything you tried.
Wow, that definitely kind of pulls into like almost an underdog story. That's amazing. So now, who has inspired you as an author?
Well, I love lots of mystery novels. I like, James Lee Burke and Joseph Finder and Scott Turow. But I'll tell you that there are three novelists who I love reading, and they aren't writers of thrillers. One is Mark Twain, who wrote wonderfully and so plainly and easily. You read Twain and you don't see all the skill that goes into making it flow. And we read him today, more than 100 years later. The second is Ray Bradbury, who showed that you didn't have to get put into one little box and not be a literary writer. He was thought of as a science fiction or science fantasy writer. But he was a fantastic writer, and his books like Fahrenheit 451 and The Illustrated Man live on today. He also had a second career. He was a screenwriter. He actually wrote the screenplay for Moby Dick, the one with Gregory Peck. And the third is Charles Dickens. I mean, Dickens wrote in serial format for magazines, and he was able to have cliffhangers at the end of his chapters where people just waited for the next edition of the magazine to come out. And when my wife and I write these books, that's our goal, is to write a chapter so that when people get to the end, they say, oh, okay, I'll just read one or two more pages to find out what happens next.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing about when you go back to like the Charles Dickens era when they were writing columns and in magazines, and you would get this periodical like every month or so, and you'd have this short story in there. Even back, in the 40s and 50s, they would do the same thing. Now things have moved to the internet where people will produce books online, running books, and one website that comes to mind, and we're actually going to be including some authors from this website, is called Wattpad.com, and they actually do the same kind of concept. They allow the reader to read the chapters as they're being created. And it's kind of a cool concept. So yeah, it's really neat. But I mean, now you've been compared to John Grisham and Michael Connelly. Do you feel the pressure that comes with trying to keep up with their style?
Well, my wife and I don't try to write in a particular style other than our own. It's very flattering to be compared to people like Grisham and Connelly, and others have compared us to Joseph Finder and others. But what we try to do is to find a style of voice that we feel is both true to ourselves and compelling to readers to read.
Wow, that's great. Now, you were a jazz musician in the New Orleans French Quarter. You were also a radio, television announcer. I mean, and not to mention that you're a lawyer, okay? So you have all these different things. How does adding novelists to your list of accomplishments fulfill you, and how does it fulfill you?
Well, that's a great question. Actually, all of my career and my wife's career was in television as well as behind the camera and writing scripts has helped us. I compare writing kind of like jazz. I mean, if you know a song and you hear a jazz version of it, there's a backbone, there's a structure that you recognize. But what makes it creative is how they embellish it. And I think that's what makes a novel, which is not the bare plot, but how the characters and the description of the area and the people and their reactions embellish a novel so that you become engrossed in it. In fact, I think what all writers want, and I think what all readers want, is that when you get to the end of a novel and you think, oh, this is terrible, I'm at the end, I've lost the world that these people are in. I love being with them. Yeah,
and that's the thing. Now, because you're a jazz musician, right, do you still play?
Every day. Still play every day.
Do you mind playing a little bit for us?
Not at all. I'll give you just a little bit, and hopefully it will come across the microphone. Hold on a second.
Yeah.
So that's just a taste.
Wow, I like it. I love it. It takes you right down to the French Quarter, doesn't it?
Well,
man.
The French Quarter was the heart of jazz and the formation of it.
So now you have put a lot of research into your books. I mean, that first one, Cotton Crest Curse, I mean, you had to go back. Geez, what was the year that it kind of rolled back to?
Well, it runs from the Civil War era to the Civil Rights era, and it involves the lives and impact of deaths on 5 families in and around the plantation. And because it was published by University Press, the LSU Press, which is a Pulitzer Prize-winning press, they're the same ones who did Confederacy of Dunces, the book had to get vetted by historians. And although the the lead characters and the murders are fictional, the history is accurate.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. Like, for example, when you're reading books like Steinbeck, or you're reading anything that's kind of period based, when it was written in the period that it was written, you're going to come across things that are not popular today, just because things are different. But just like with any story, you have to tell it the way it was. Did you find it challenging, like almost where you had to almost stop yourself and say, should I put this in the book? Shouldn't I put this in the book? Things that would be related to that time frame?
Well, the book deals specifically with racism and religious animosity. Mm-hmm. So it's dealt with frankly, but it's dealt with accurately. In fact, we were very careful that the language that was used in the book is language of the Civil War. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about racial language. I'm talking about, a small stone was called a dornick, and things of that nature, so that when you read it, you get a feel that you're back in that era.
Yeah, that's amazing, too, because a lot of people, they try to write historical fiction, and they will write it as if it was written from 2017, and somebody who's seeing it from 2017, and they'll put their own scope on it, and it's really intriguing when people can actually submerge you in the time frame by, like you said, the use of words or any kind of nuances that they have at that time. So now, your first published book, like I said before, it has a lot of culture and history surrounding Louisiana. When you approached your research, did you have to talk to people of that time frame? Did you talk to older people?
Well, actually, I collect historical books of the era, so I have a large collection of my own that I was at. But the origin of the story revolves around two things. Number one is, if we know the truth about something, do we have an obligation to say it if it hurts somebody or if it helps somebody? Mm-hmm. What is our obligation? And the second is, can we ever really know the entire truth about an event? And those two concepts motivate the entire book.
Wow. So now, like I said before, you're a jazz musician, all right? You were in radio, you were in television. You're a lawyer. I mean, what's next for Mike Rubin?
Well, we have my wife and I have another book that we've just sent to our agent, and we're working on the one after that. So we have a lot of fun time. Some people do Sudoku, or they go to football games, or they go to baseball games, or they like to travel. Our joy is writing. That's what we do for fun.
Wow, and that's a kind of a different thing we haven't had on this show too, is a co-authorship between a married couple. When you guys bounce ideas off of each other, do you ever argue about some things that you want to put in the story?
No, actually, we walk early every morning, about 4:30 in the morning. We walk 2 to 3 miles, and that's when we talk about the plot and the characters of our books. So that when we sit down to write, we know who the key characters are and what they want. We typically know the beginning and the middle and the end. Now, we don't know all the connections. We don't know all the sub-characters. That's part of the fun of writing, is to how that evolves. Mm-hmm. So when we write, we don't have an argument about what's happening. Our real question is twofold. Number one is, do we have enough dialogue, not enough dialogue, enough description, too much description? And secondly, is there anything in it that slows the reading and the book down? Because if it slows the reader down, it has to come out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, because you guys are published and you've been working in this industry for quite some time, what advice would you give a new author who's just starting out, just getting their feet wet?
Another great question. So I have 3 pieces of advice. The first is, keep writing. If you wait till your book is perfect on chapter 1 before you write chapter 2, you'll never finish it. And this is the piece of advice I got when I started going to writers' conferences, which is, you can't write a book until you've written it. Write the whole book. You can always fix it later. You can correct it, but you can't correct it and you can't see where the errors are until you've written it. So write it start to finish, get it done, and when you have a book under your belt, then you can go back and correct it. In fact, many writers say that the first thing they write is usually not very good, but by the 5th draft, it's excellent. So, but that's because they've written the entire book. They know where they're going. The second is, decide what kind of writer you are. It's often thought that there are 2 types of writers, plotsers and pantsers. A plotzer being somebody who plots out the book in great detail before they begin. And a pantser is somebody who simply starts writing by the seat of his or her pants. We're kind of in the middle. We know the outline. And the third is to go to get involved with the writers group or go to writers conferences. There are lots of writers conferences around the country. For example, we write thrillers and suspense novels, so there's conferences like BoucherCon, which travels around the country, and Killer Nashville and Thriller Fest. And you can find these online, and they have all kinds of seminars at these things where you actually meet the writers, you go hear panel discussions, and you can meet with agents and people who can give you advice.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and that's another thing we've seen on this show quite a bit is those people that get involved with these conferences and with these basically these meetings of like-minded individuals start to find out that there's readers that tag along and they want to try something new too. And it's always great to make connections with what you've done over the years. I'm sure that you've made tons of connections with people that you probably would have never met had you not been in the industries that you were in.
Well, when we started writing, my wife and I knew nothing about the writing world, and we have just been entranced by going to these meetings, meeting other writers, meeting readers, meeting fans, and we learn something new at every one we go to.
Wow, incredible. Now, we have a segment of the show right here, and what we're going to do is, this is kind of like a game portion, and we're going to do a little bit of a Mad Lib. And because you have a lawyer background, we are going to work on getting together this story, or it's almost like a police report about what happened here. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. It's going to be things like names of a noun, name of a place, things like that. So let's get started. I need the name of a state.
Illinois.
I actually thought you were going to say Louisiana, but that's okay. Okay.
Well, I was, but I figured that was so obvious I would throw you off.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. All right. So I need a verb.
Going.
All right. And I need a noun.
Carrot.
All right. And I need a proper name, like a name of a person.
Anne.
Anne. Okay. I need another noun.
Elephant.
All right. And then I need a part of the body.
Elbow.
All right. And now I need an adjective.
Reddish.
Okay. And then the name of a relative, like an aunt, uncle, sister, brother.
Oh, a name of a person or a type of name?
Like a type of relative.
Oh, okay. Great-grandfather.
I wasn't expecting that either.
Well, that was one of the features in the Cotton Crest Curse.
Just all the surprises. I gotcha. All right, so here we go. I need an activity.
Swimming.
All right. And then I need a chain restaurant.
A chain restaurant. Denny's.
Denny's. Oh, man, that sounds good right now. All right. And then I need a verb in the past tense.
A verb in the past tense. Had seen.
More of an action verb.
Oh, more of an action verb.
Yeah.
Ran.
Ran. All right, that's good. Okay, and then I need a name of a month.
Name of January.
All right. I need a verb.
Smelling.
All right, and a verb past tense.
Swept.
Okay, and a noun. Or an adjective, I'm sorry.
Adjectives. Green.
All right. And a verb.
Well, you have a long thing.
Yeah, I know, and I'm filling it out by hand too, so.
Bragging.
Bragging?
D-R-A-G-G, dragging.
All right.
As in dragging something along.
And a noun.
Faucet.
All right, and the last one, a noun in the plural.
Pigtails.
Pigtails. All right. All right, here we go. This is what we call weird news. All right, here we go. A woman in Illinois was arrested this morning after she was going in front of carrots and had a history of going in front of carrots. No one, not even his elephant, ever imagined that he would go in front of carrots. He got one stuck in his elbow. Okay. I always thought he was a little reddish, but I never thought he'd do something like this. Even his great-grandfather was surprised. After a brief swim, the cops followed him to Denny's, where he reportedly ran into the fry machine. In January, the woman was charged with a similar case, but rather than smelling with a elephant, she swept with a green dog. Either way, we imagine that after witnessing him dragging a faucet, there are probably a whole lot of pigtails that are going to need some therapy.
Dragging a faucet, that could be the beginning of a story.
It really could. And I'm not sure if you want to go ahead and start publishing this and get work on that. I'm not sure. I don't. You can have the story because I'm not sure if anybody else wants it. But it was a pleasure having you on the show today, Mike. It was so cool.
Well, thank you, Emit, and I appreciate the questions. And again, the two books are The Cotton Crest Curse and Cashed Out. And I have a website where people can go to find out more about me and the books and read excerpts. It's Rubin, MRUBIN books, all one word, mrubinbooks.com.
All right, and thank you so much. And this is Emit Blackwell signing out. Keep on reading and keep on writing, my friends.
Searching the web for the most talented, creative, and intriguing independent authors.
The Emit Blackwell Show, diving into the creative minds of sci-fi, fantasy, horror, and paranormal authors. Their fantasy is our reality.